Okay, I think I'm going to get things underway. Looking around the room, this looks about the sort of crowd we were expecting. So, firstly, thank you all for coming. My name's Chris Lazenby from the HR department. Many of you know me already, and this event today is sort of the last event of what's been a really great health and wellbeing week for us, and I think we've got a real treat in store today as well. Just to say, we've been running events all through the week, and all sorts of different focuses on health and wellbeing things. And what we've got today is something that Brian, our colleague from security, approached us about some time ago to say that he'd quite like to take part in one of these weeks, one of these events. And so we'll hear from Brian in a moment, and he's the main event today, really. But after Brian's given his presentation, we will also be joined by Freddie from Toastmasters, and also Barry from an organisation called Starfish for a bit of a question and answer session at the end. So I hope you'll enjoy that too. Brian has asked me to say that inevitably in life there are going to be moments in our lives where things get difficult. Relationships end, we might move on from jobs, we might lose jobs, we lose loved ones, and things can be difficult for us. Today Brian's going to share what I think is a truly inspirational story of how he has bravely worked his way through a number of those sorts of challenges, and also how he has overcome what he describes as his greatest challenge to date, which is overcoming his stammer. So without further ado, I will invite Brian to come and take the stage to deliver his talk, Never Give Up. Please welcome Brian.
Your name is your identity. It's who you are. Could you tell me your name, please?
Sarah.
Are you, please?
Simon.
One more?
Tony.
Thank you very much. As Dale Carnegie said in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, a person's name to that person is the most important sound in any language. But imagine if you could not say your own name. How would that make you feel? For a person that stammers, saying your own name can be the most difficult thing for them to say. Good afternoon, my name is Brian Skelton. It's the fear of stammering that stops you from saying what you want to say when you want to say it. In normal conversation, you could swap words for something that you can say rather than the words you can't say. Did you know that 1% of the population has a stammer? And that you will walk past people who stammer every day without knowing that they have a stammer. It's not just about the talking, it's called social stigma and other major problems as well for the stammerer. You dread sometimes when people might take the mickey out of you when you can't say your name properly. I mean, who can't say their name properly? My mum passed away from a cancer when I was 5.5, and my father had a heart attack when I was 7. And I think that's when I started to stammer around about that time. Obviously, it was the shock of what had happened. And just around about when I was 8, I went into Dr. Nardo's, which is a children's home. And what I can remember is when I first went there, I started to wet the bed, which is not surprising when you think about all the things that had happened. And some of the other children would take the Mickey, they would sing Brian's wet the bed, wet the bed. This was the start of being picked on. When I was 11, I went to an all-boys secondary school, and I used to get into a lot of fights because some of the boys knew how to wind me up about my stammer. And the teachers would say, "Not you again, Skelton." It became a bit of a running joke, but it wasn't that funny. Imagine you're in the classroom and the teacher asks you a question and you're asked to put up your hand if you know the answer. I'd be too scared to put up my hand to answer the question because I'd fear that the other boys would laugh and giggle and take the mickey. And that's how it was in them days. These sort of things went on. When I left the school and the children's home, I always had the feeling that people were still laughing at me. And I'd be in a room and suddenly people would start laughing, and I always imagined that they was laughing at me and my stammer. Obviously that wasn't true, but that's what I had in my head. What job did you want to do when you was younger? When I was younger, I wanted to be a chef on a ship. And I went to train to be a chef in a local college. And I was being the chef on the ship. That didn't happen because I was too scared really to push it or to take it on. And a job like that would be too glamorous anyway. And who would want someone that stammered in a job like that? I worked for nearly 20 years as a pastry chef in a bank, in the staff canteen. I was a good pastry chef, so if you want any after dinner pastries, please let me know. I sort of say, I stayed there for nearly 20 years, but I wanted to move, but I didn't really have the confidence to do that, so that didn't happen. And then one day, I was called into the manager's office, and the manager said, Brian, you're going to be made redundant. So I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I applied for 2 other chef's jobs, but they didn't really go well. I stammered all the way through the interviews, and I give up that idea about being a chef. Once I'd done that, a few weeks later, I see an advert in the newspaper for a contract security firm. So I applied for the job and I went for the interview, and during the interview I really stammered badly again, and I didn't think I had a chance of getting the job. And I was really surprised when I got a letter through the post saying that I'd got the job with this contract security firm. So I learned at that time that if you want something and you want to go for it, then go for it. It's the thing that you need to do. Once I started working for the security firm, I was working in the reception, and there was a parcel that got delivered to the reception, and I signed for it. Now this parcel got lost, and the boss said to me, "You lost this parcel, Brian, you've got to find it." And he started to blame me for losing it. And I knew it wasn't me that had lost this parcel. And then and he was saying that the firm could lose the contract, it would be my fault. And some of the other people who was working with was blaming me as well, saying that they could all lose their job if we don't find the parcel. But I knew it wasn't me that lost it. And I was really feeling upset about this. This really got to me. And this really got to me, and I really got down, and I didn't really know what to do, and I really felt upset about it. And it got to the point where things were really getting bad. And I was due to start night shift. And I just, as I say, things really got bad, so I just decided to go around the pub during their lunchtime and have a drink instead of going to work. So as I was drinking, these thoughts come into my head. I thought, I just can't carry on anymore. This isn't going to happen. I just don't want to do this. And this thought come into my head about committing suicide to just finish it all. And the more I drank, the more I thought, well, this will be the answer. This will stop everything. So when I got home, I went to my loft and I got a bit of rope out the loft and put it around the beam and made a noose out of it. And I went to the front door and I wrote a note, left it on the table by the front door. And I left the front door slightly open. And I got back up and got this rope and put it around my neck. And I was just standing there waiting to, just thinking about what I was going to do. Meow, meow. Did that get your attention? Well, it got mine. It was Ginger, the cat from next door. She got in through the open front door, and she was walking around. And I often fed the cat as well, so I think she knew what she was coming in for. Meow, meow. That cat always meowed when she was hungry. So I couldn't hang myself and let the cat go hungry now, could I? So I got down, undid the rope and everything, and I fed the cat. And I sort of cuddled the cat as well, and then I put her outside. After everything that had gone on that day, I was really tired, so I went to bed and fell asleep. And thinking about it, that bloody cat saved my life. So after that, my boss phoned me up. He phoned me up that night, and he asked me where I was. I said that I was really, really ill, and I couldn't come to work. I fell asleep. And he told me that parcel had been found that afternoon. Someone had locked it in a cupboard and sort of left it there. So it wasn't my fault after all. I was blaming myself for something that wasn't my fault. So after that, things seemed to clear up a bit, and I went back to work. when you're down, you never know what's going to happen. You never know where the inspiration would come from. It was a little while later, there was a television program called Pop Idol. I don't know if any of you remember Pop Idol. You all look too young to remember. That this program was on the telly. It was a singing contest. But with some other contestants, you wouldn't have known that. and another thing, do you know that if you stammer, if you sing, if you have a stammer and you sing, you can sing without stammering? Don't worry, I'm not going to sing to you. Be quite relieved to hear that. So as the contest went on, Gareth Gates was taking part, who singer-songwriter from Bradford, and he has a stammer as well, and he was taking part in the contest. And as the contest went on, he got further and further, and he was in the final, and he got become second in the contest.
Brian, your mic.
What again?
Stand by your leg.
Oh, well, hang on. And he come second in the contest. And I remember watching him one Saturday night thinking, if he can do that in front of millions of people, it's about time that I did something about my stammer. At that time I was swapping words and doing all the things I didn't really want to do. So it was a little while later, there was an article in the Sun newspaper of all places from a young lady that had been on a 3-day speech therapy course called Starfish. And she said that them 3 days has really changed her life. So I cut this article out of the paper and I put it in a drawer. And it was a little while later that I was really having a bad time with my stammer. I couldn't hardly put 2 words together. So I remembered this article and I took it out the drawer and I started to read it. And this is when I phoned up the Starfish Project and thought, right, I need to do this. So I phoned up and booked my place on the course. And I went on the Starfish Project, which is an organisation that helps people, a non-profit making organisation that helps people who stammer. And during those 3 days I was taught a breathing technique, but the best thing of all was that I actually talked about my stammer and with people who knew what I was talking about. So that was a big relief for me to be able to talk about something that I'd never really talked about before. And during those 3 days, it really did help, and it still does today. When I finished that 3-day course, I made up this poem, which I say to myself sometimes now, because I still have days when things aren't going too well. So I say this poem. When I use control, I can say what I want to, when I want to. With control comes confidence. With confidence, I can do what I want to, when I want to. No more anger. No more tears. No more frustration. Be positive. Be a proud, recovering stammerer. I have seen whatever your problem whatever you maybe that's going on in your life. There are groups about that can help you. There are organisations. There's support groups. So don't be too scared about going to them. They're there to help you. And that's what I found with Starfish. So there's lots of things about that can help anybody, whatever your problems or whatever your anxieties are. So use these groups, they will help you. After that 3-day course, my confidence really grew, and I really started to do things, the things that I wanted to do. I joined, a friend told me about Toastmasters and how much it had helped him. Toastmasters is an organisation that teaches you public speaking and leadership skills. And Toastmasters has really helped me a lot. I know it helps a lot of other people as well. And I went on my first Toastmasters group talk in January 2007. And it took me 9 years, but I achieved the DTM, which is the highest award you can get in Toastmasters. And I still really can't believe that I've actually done that. So that's something that I've achieved, that because before I would never ever stick at anything. So for me to stick at something for 9 years is something something unusual, especially for me anyway. One of the things I've learned that is if you just keep pushing yourself, if you don't give up, you will achieve what you want to achieve. Whatever your problem, there is a place in society for you. There is people there to help you. And today I have learned to live with my stammer. My stammer doesn't run my life anymore. I run my life. And I do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. After I finished the 3-day speech therapy course, I applied for the job as a supervisor at the British Museum, and during the interview I used the breathing technique which I learned at Toastmasters. So that must have gone well, so I'm still here. So those, of course my stammer hasn't gone away. I still stammer. As you have heard today, I've stammered on a few words. But I can proudly stand here and tell you, my name is Brian Skelton, a proud recovering stammerer. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to introduce Barry, who is from the Starfish Project. He's just going to have a few words with you, and then we're going to have Freddie Daniels afterwards, who's from Toastmasters, so we're going to have a question and answer session. But first I'd like to introduce Barry Ricks.
Thank you, Ryan. My name's Barry Ricks, and I have the pleasure of being here this afternoon representing the Starfish Project, which you've heard Brian mention. Starfish is a non-profit making organisation simply because we believe that it's wrong to take financial advantage of somebody's misfortune. Stammering happened to be Brian's misfortune. It also happens to be my misfortune. And so I had the privilege of being on the course that Brian came to back in 2005, and I helped coach him, and we're good friends to this day, and I'm very proud to know him. There's absolutely no comparison in this man today than when I first met him all those years ago. Quite simply because Brian has embraced change. And at Starfish, that's how we manage stammering, by empowering the individual with change. Yes, we use a breathing technique, as Brian has said, to build confidence, to enable you to speak in control. It's the breath that opera singers use. It's the breath that any good media presenter will use. Brian said that when you sing, you don't stammer. That's true, because when you sing, you breathe differently. And so the technique, the breathing technique that we use is learning to breathe, speak in a cycle. And if you listen to opera singers, and you will hear this breath before they sing, this costal breath, because it's coming from the costal area of the diaphragm, and it's fantastic for projection. And this breathing technique is the same technique that Lionel Logue taught to the late King George VI. Unfortunately, the King died before he had time to refine that technique. So we use a breathing technique to gain control, but we also encourage avoidance reduction. So that's Brian purposely putting himself into a situation which he would have avoided as a stammerer. And positive attitude, creating a positive attitude, because stammering, as you've heard, rides in the back of negative thoughts, because that's what stammering does to you. It lowers your self-esteem. It encourages thoughts of humiliation. Quite simply, stammering is a roller coaster ride, but every time you go down, you never quite come back up enough. And Brian's story is not unusual. Quite often, stammerers will have thoughts of suicide because of the psychological torment can be unbearable. And also the physical aspect of having to live with a stammer can be physically exhausting.
Yeah,
Can't it, Brian?
Of course.
Physically exhausting. So very simply, we run courses monthly for adult stammerers and twice a year for children from the age of 12 upwards. And every August we have a young person's course from 18. And each month the courses are full. So that very briefly is the Starfish project. I've got some bookmarks here which I'm going to hand around to you. You might wonder why it's called the Starfish project. Well, the Starfish story is on one side, and on the other side we've got contact details for the Starfish project. So please take one, take a few, there's enough here, and should the opportunity arise, pass one on to somebody who might need to know. So that's me, Barry Ricks of the Starfish project. It's now my privilege to hand over to Freddie Daniels, who's going to tell you about Toastmasters, which is also a very good organisation. Freddie.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, Toastmasters is a global non-profit making organisation, and it helps people to deal with the fear of public speaking and to develop leadership skills. We have something like 350,000 members worldwide, and we run around a series of speaking clubs. We have something like 80 speaking clubs in London alone. In fact, there's about probably half a dozen within a mile or so of here. And we, through those speaking clubs, people come and practice and improve their public speaking skills and also learn some leadership skills. Brian is a fabulous example of exactly what we do. And we have all sorts of people. We have people from Angel and Acton and everywhere you can think of across London. We have stockbrokers, solicitors, security guards. We have all different types of people who come along to us. It's a very open environment. In fact, one of the great pleasures is to meet people from so many different places. And so they come together on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and practice their speaking skills, working through a series of different manuals and getting feedback from their peers about how they can improve going forward. Because it's a non-profit making organisation, the costs of doing it are very, very reasonable. Typically, it might cost you something like, say, £75 for 6 months, maybe 100 max, depending on the cost of the venue that the club has. But you join Toastmasters and you join your club. But when you've joined your club, you suddenly find there's this enormous organisation, as I say, 350,000 people, 140 countries around the world that you can get involved with. And there's just so much knowledge to be shared within that. So if it's nothing to do with stammering, we do actually have a club that is specifically called King Speakers, specifically for people who have stammering or social anxiety issues. And so if you do know somebody who's looking for a place to come and practice in London and they have a stammer, send them to King Speakers, because they are a fabulous group of people who will warmly welcome and encourage them to get up on stage and practice their speaking. But if you don't, and you would like to do something like Brian's done and get up on stage and tell your story to an auditorium of people, then come along to Toastmasters and practice your skills. And what you'll find is those skills are so transferable because they are helpful in interviews, they're helpful in meetings, they're helpful in so many other types of ways. So toastmasters.org is our website. You can find out all the details there. Maybe if anyone's got any questions, we can get Barry back up and Brian back up, and you can come join us as well.
That's right, I was going to
Has anyone got any questions about anything they've seen or heard today?
What's the difference between stammering and stuttering?
Stammering and stuttering, no difference at all. Stuttering is what tend to be referred to in the United States, whereas stammering is what we refer to in Europe. There's no difference, however, there are different types of stutters. There's two types. There's the overt stammer or stutter, where you can't hide your disfluency, and there's the covert type of stammer or stutter, where people are very good at swapping words, feared sounds, for words and sounds that are easier to say. Having said that, that's probably the most exhausting out of the two, because you're constantly having to think ahead about what you're going to say and how you're going to swap your words in order to say it. But stammering and stuttering, just different terminology around the world. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could you tell us a little bit about this breathing technique? which
Yes.
Brian was employing during
Yeah.
his speech.
As I say, it's been around forever. It's the same thing that Lionel Logue taught to King George VI. And it's breathing from the costal area of the diaphragm, simply because you get much more control from doing that. When you stammer, you tend to do so on a shallow, short breath. So by using breathe, speak, and release air in a cycle. So just to give you an example, my name is Barry Ricks, and I live in Essex. So I'm speaking at the top of this costal breath, and the power of the breath simply pings the words out. So we refine that as we get more confident. You may notice that I don't take such a deep breath as maybe Brian does, but you can refine it as you build confidence and stammering comes down. So that's the breathing side of it. Does that help?
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
okay.
So you can never really cure a stammer, you can only just learn to live with it.
Yes, there is no cure for stammering. If you hear of anyone who claims to have one, then be cautious. There is no cure, but there is probably more help available now than there ever used to be. I mean, when I first started stammering at the age of 8, the advice I got from our local GP was, don't worry, you'll probably grow out of it. Well, I'm still waiting. But there are very good therapies out there now, including the Starfish Project, which simply enables you, as Brian has said, to say what you want, when you want, how you want. Yes, you're always going to be dealing with the stammer, but you control it where it used to control you.
Brian, you mentioned how hard interviews were for you. Do you have any advice for people who do interviews, or like ways that if you could make it easier for people with a stammer to be part of the interview process, or to be put on the spot kind of to talk?
Sorry, what do you mean, what, like now, being put on the spot?
Yeah. So like if we have to interview someone
Oh, right.
they have a scammer, like, is there stuff that people could do? Is it just good enough to be supportive, or
Yeah, of course, yeah. You can do, if you notice they stammer, then give them eye contact. And ask, I know when I've been to an interview, and Barry would probably tell you the same, I would say to the interviewer, I've got to stammer, could you bear with me while I use a breathing technique? Because when I've done the Starfish Project, they advised that we do that, and it does help when you talk about it. Because to be honest, before I would never ever talk about it, and it's all this sort of just builds up here. But I'd say just give them eye contact and ask them if there's anything that you can do for them to help them.
I think just to add to that, I think one of the biggest challenges for somebody who does stammer, I think, is exactly as Brian says, you build up a shame almost inside of you.
Yeah.
And actually by being open and allowing that person to be vulnerable and to share that they do have a stammer, and it to be out on the table, I think that makes a massive difference.
It does.
It takes the weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question about you were saying growing up it was very difficult and other children were less than helpful. Do you think over the years there's better public understanding and more support and more thoughtful approaches?
I think there is nowadays, there's more help out there and more people do understand, but there are still a lot of people that really don't understand. Because it's like in the situation, sometimes I still find it difficult to say my name, and people would just turn around and say, if I'm struggling on saying my name, they say, don't you know your name then? And that's, to be honest, that really annoys me when they say that.
Yeah.
I used to get really angry, but now I just sort of laugh about it because I think, or Barry will tell you this as well, if you've got a stammer, you have to have a good sense of humour. That helps.
Yeah. If I can just add to that, unfortunately, over the years, attitudes are formed. And just to give you an example, I'm a great fan of the late Ronnie Barker, but his portrayal of Arkwright in Open All Hours never did the stammerer any favours. Fortunately, Colin Firth in The King's Speech has done a tremendous amount to make people aware, and that's probably the first film that's ever been made that comes anywhere close to giving anybody a good feeling of what it's like to have to live with a stammer. Yeah.
Can I see your hand down here?
Yeah, so Brian, you spoke quite bravely, I thought, about your suicidal thoughts, and I wondered whether you had any specific support around that. I'm thinking of things like Samaritans or anything like that.
No, to be honest, not really, no. I just sort of, I did speak to a few people about that, but I didn't really go to any other, like Samaritans or anything like that. I just sort of, I don't know, worked it out myself, if you like. But yeah, I suppose if I thought about it, maybe I should have done, and I probably would have got over it a bit more quicker. But, well, no, not really.
And just to add, I mean, this is probably only the second or third time in a public space Brian's ever told anyone that. This is not something he goes around telling people. In fact, trying to persuade him to tell that story was bloody hard. Right, but it was important, I think, for the speech that you gave today. So yes, I think that's it. You hide that stuff, don't you? You just you suppress it, and that's exactly what happened. And I remember you telling me when you went to Starfish, finding other people who actually could relate to your experience.
That's right. Yeah.
For the first time, you had people who actually could understand how you felt about things, and that was a kind of very unique and relieving experience for you.
Well,
you cried a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I certainly did. Yeah, because Freddie was the one that helped me write the speech. He was saying he did take a bit of persuading to talk about that thing, or help.
Persuading.
Yeah, persuading.
And did you adopt the cat?
No, I didn't actually. No, it was next door for quite a while, but no, I didn't adopt it. No.
Right, did the owners of the cat know how important that cat was to you?
Yeah, well, I did feed it a lot more after that.
How are you doing?
I want to know if your boss apologised when they found that parcel as well.
No, he didn't actually, no.
Typical.
Yeah. Well,
That wasn't the British Museum, just to make that a different organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking about time. I know that Brian and the guys here will be happy to take some more questions, but I think just because we're coming up to sort of 50 minutes, I think if those of you who do need to get away, you want to do that now, that's fine. Anybody who's got more questions, want to come down and continue the conversation, that's also good too. But
Thank you.
I still have time.